welcome back to The Winning Leap. Now, in the last segment, we gave you a holistic view on the problem of economic crime in India. But it's now time to be proactive and seek out sustainable solutions. So let's see if we can find the answers to these challenges. While there have been strides taken by the government to combat economic crimes, such as the Companies Act of 2013, which deals with protecting against corruption, it would be beneficial for us to look at global best practices to fight the problem of economic crime.
You have laws on privacy, okay, counterfeiting. How many of them are effectively implemented? You go ask the music industry, the software industry, they're crying. They cannot be research and development, they cannot be growth because of the counterfeiting. Why isn't that stopping? So I think the problem is not more legislation, the problem is actually to implement. How many convictions do you get at the end of the day on corruption and bribery or counterfeiting? The records are dismal.
Singapore is well known for its stance on corruption and has taken strict measures to guarantee the eradication of its corrupt past. For a country like Singapore that was mired in corruption, to come out of it and excel in eradicating it means there is hope for India. And I'm here with Ashutosh Mishra, Executive Director, Transparency International India, who's going to talk to us about the Singapore anti-corruption model and how we can begin to deploy some of the policies right here in India. Welcome to the show, Ashutosh.
Thank you.
Let's look at Singapore as an example. Singapore has consistently ranked amongst the top 10 corruptionless countries in the world. Now, of course, this is no small task and it can't be done without political support. So what is the role that the government has played in really abolishing corruption to such a big extent in Singapore?
See, coming to the Singapore, if you have to go back into history, let's say 1960s, I mean, the government was very serious about the corruption issues and they got a support from the masses as well. And then the corruption, I mean, they came out with the Prevention of Corruption Act. We do have an act like in India, but you know, the act has been revised regularly according to the needs of the hour, and then their anti-corruption agency is quite effective in terms of directly reports to the PMO. There is no political interference, there is incentives for whistleblowing, there are laws which are protecting whistleblowers, and then of course the political will, the commitment is there.
You know, this is such a great task and it absolutely cannot be done without an effective corruption control framework. So can you talk to us a little bit about the framework for corruption control in Singapore?
The first step should be, of course, the political will. Then second is drafting of the certain laws, anti-corruption laws, which was done in Singapore in late 50s and then early 60s. Their Prevention Corruption Act, and there is always a provision for amendments, modifications. And third is the anti-corruption agencies. Okay, they have been established in the year 1958 or 59, and then they came out with certain institutional arrangements like training to the officials, focus on incentives. Then of course the reforms in the civil services, which is missing in India. I mean, where there is an incentive for being honest, rotation of the officers at the sensitive positions. There is a law in the Singapore, I mean, way back in 1980s, which talks about corruption in private sector. So there is a seriousness on the part of a government, which is missing in India.
Yes, absolutely. Let's also talk about the judicial aspect of it. What are some of the checks and balances afforded by the judiciary to perpetrators of corruption?
What we can say, it's a bit different because the political class or the ruling political party is more committed to the anti-corruption aspect, and that is also affecting the judiciary. So time-bound resolution of cases are there. More focus on training on prosecution aspect also. So people are great. I mean, somebody who has a good knowledge of the subject is willing to join the services rather than joining a private sector. So in the longer run, it's affecting the rate of prosecution or the rate of solving the crime, especially financial crime in Singapore. That has really helped the country a lot.
All right, and finally, India being such a vast country, in your opinion, is it viable that we can adopt some of the best practices from Singapore right here in India?
Of course, we can. I mean, most important is the reforming the civil services. There should be accountability. I mean, our civil services, that's what I feel, are not accessible or not accountable also. Then bringing private sector. I mean, after 1991, there has been rapid privatization in India. There is no law to deal with the supply side of corruption. No, Prevention of Corruption Act only deals with the demand side of corruption. And if you can recall, last UPA government, they introduced a lot of anti-corruption bills. Some of them lapsed. So it's a high time for a government to introduce a number of bills, new acts to deal with the private side of corruption. Then of course the focus on training part.
So, you know, the government has recently introduced this black money bill, but it seems like there's a lot more that can be done given the size of the problem that really exists in India. What are your thoughts on this?
You need to have, let's say, a long-term strategy. Now, government came out with a black money bill, but what about the anti-corruption bills which have been pending? What about the public procurement bill? What about the beneficial ownership? I mean, there are a number of shadow companies which are being running here, and we exactly don't know who is the owner. Third, of course, the whistleblower protection. Fourth, of course, I'm talking about the private sector corruption. No, we don't have any law. We have ratified United Nations Convention Against Corruption, but there is no mechanism for asset recovery of the corrupt officials or the corrupt politicians.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Well, on that note, it's time for a short break. But don't go anywhere, because when we return, we help you understand the ever-changing face of fraud in India. Stay tuned.